Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to start the webinar. Please get ready for the Philippine National Anthem.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw, may nilang ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhatik pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Once again, good morning everyone, and welcome to this webinar entitled 4G or Forge Your Future. Gain, Grit, Grow, and Give. I am Mr. Norman Padilla. I am the head of the Ateneo Career Center and Alumni Hub. And with me is Mrs. Maria Rosana Fernandez, the president of the Ateneo Blue Knight Association. So we will be your facilitators for this webinar. Now, this webinar is being held as our way of responding to the needs of our stakeholders, the students and alumni of Ateneo de Davao University, in the midst of this global pandemic. This COVID-19 pandemic has left all of us unprepared and unready to deal with its consequences and the changes it brought to our life and society as a whole. Life as we know it has changed because of this pandemic, and the opportunities that presented itself before have also changed. The already competitive labor market has become even more competitive, and it is now up to you, the job searcher, to make yourself stand out from the crowd. It is our aim that through this webinar and from our distinguished speakers, you will gain insider tips on how to make yourself stand out. Find out exactly what employers are looking for these days, how you can get your resume noticed, and how you can convince them to hire you through an elevator pitch and through the online interview. In essence, we aim for you to gain the knowledge you need so you can develop the grit to be able to adapt to this new situation, and thereby grow in your chosen or future professions. And in the end, give back to those in need, fulfilling the tenets of our Ateneo formation of Magis and of being men and women for others. It is our hope that at the end of this, you will face the challenges wrought by this pandemic head-on and come out on top. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this webinar will be unlike the others, as we will employ a free-flowing discussion format. We will be asking our distinguished speakers questions on the matters stated earlier, and they will answer according to their expertise. At the end of the discussions, we will have a short role play and interview demo, where our experts will critique and give tips for improvement. You can take notes or do voice recordings of the proceedings if you need to. Also, please do not forget to mute your microphones, and you may also turn off your cameras if you experience lag. Now, if you have any questions, please type them on the chat box, okay? Or you may ask them later during the open forum. Right now, I would like to call on Mrs. Maria Rosana Fernandez to introduce our guests.
So thank you very much, Norman. I would just like to verify if you can hear me clearly. Just please give me a thumbs up. Thank you very much. So let me introduce our first speaker. He graduated from Ateneo de Davao University in 1989 with a degree of Bachelor of Applied Science in Business Administration, major in Marketing. In college, he was the Samahan President, also the Business Administration Execom Chairman, 1988 Kalasag Editor-in-Chief, Piglas Ateneo Political Party President, Buklod Atenista Advisor, and the CEAP or CEAP Student Representative. He started his professional career in 1989 as Unit Manager of Procter & Gamble, until 1995. He built his illustrious career with the following roles: Area Sales and Distribution Manager of Mindanao of the Ice Cream and Chilled Products Division of Nestle Philippines Incorporated, National Sales Service Manager of Ice Cream and Chilled Products Division of Nestle Philippines, Assistant Regional Sales Manager for Mindanao for Intentional Distillers Philippines, also known as Diageo, Associate Consultant of Best Option Management Consultants Incorporated, President of Mix Idea Incorporated, Consultant for Vismin for Associated British Foods, Business Development Head of Mondelez International, Consumer Electric Director and Director for Training and Capability Building of Samsung Electronics. Currently, he is the Vice President of SM Shopping Center Management Corporation and responsible for the 5 malls in Mindanao for sales, revenue, and net income. He is overseeing direct reports, handling mall operations, regional operations, and leasing. Ladies and gentlemen, it is both a privilege and an honor to introduce to you our first speaker, Mr. John Oliver Chu, Bachelor of Applied Science in Marketing, Batch 1989. So let us give him a virtual round of applause, please.
Morning.
Okay. Good morning. So go ahead, Ben. So we will begin with you, and then I will allow you, can you please introduce yourself just very quickly, and then we'll go to our next speaker.
Thank you, San. Good morning to all our attendees for this webinar. My career started in 1989, as what San has mentioned. I was selling soap, cataminials, which are actually sanitary napkins, shampoo, and laundry soaps. And then moved on with selling ice cream, and then further sold wines and spirits, the most wholesome work in the world at that time. We have on-premise and off-premise tenants or accounts, and then moved to entrepreneurship. So that was about 7 years of my career. Started my own business, and then was successful, but moved on back to corporate because of the longing for further self-development and enrichment, and then moved to that was actually selling Ovaltine as consultant for American British ABF, Associated British Foods. Yeah, that's right. And then Kraft Foods Philippines, which later became Mondelez, and then Samsung Electronics, and then of course now we've got it all for you, SM.
Okay, who would not know SM? Thank you very much, Ben. And let's move on to our next speaker. Our second speaker graduated cum laude with a degree in BS Chemical Engineering in Ateneo de Davao University in March 1994. His credentials include BPI Science Awardee 1994, Department of Science and Technology Outstanding Scholar, President Engineering Executive Council for 1993 to 1994, President Junior Philippine Institute of Chemical Engineers of Ateneo, Most Outstanding Freshman, and he passed the Chemical Engineering Licensure Examination. He is a seasoned executive with well-rounded experiences in multiple disciplines, various industries, and diverse roles. He is adept in innovation, management, supply chain, distribution, product development, and quality systems, continuous improvement processes, and manufacturing. He started his career with Unilever Philippines in 1994. He was Foods Development Officer of Vandenberg Foods Division, Production Manager of Foods Division, Quality Assurance Manager, Product Development Manager for Personal Care. He then transferred to Sanofi Aventis Philippines Incorporated and was the Supply Chain and Development Manager, Director of Supply Chain and Development, And then he transferred to Sanofi Aventis Singapore and became the Product Development Director for Asia and Japan Pacific, Innovation Director for Feminine Care, and CHC Development Director. And his current position is Innovation Lead for Consumer Healthcare for Asia Pacific, still in Sanofi Aventis Singapore. Ladies and gentlemen, it is also our honor and privilege to present Mr. Eduardo Tadeo J. Hagad, BS Chemical Engineering, Batch 1994. So another virtual round of applause, please, for our second speaker. So briefly, Mr. Ed, can you share a little about yourself?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I finished my full education in Davao, but just right after left Davao, moved to Manila, stayed there for a couple of years, wag nang bilangin. But I worked within actually technically two companies, Unilever for 10 years, and after that with Sanofi for a couple of years. But I did move around in a lot of roles, and I think later on we'll talk about that in a bit. But essentially, isang kumpanya, but many different roles that I played, and I think that's one reason why I stayed around quite a while. Keep having fun, missing Davao a lot, especially now in the situation where travel is difficult. Davao is still home, and very proud to be part of this webinar today. Thank you.
So thank you very much to our two speakers. And, we're hearing who they are now, but they started somewhere. And the reason why we're doing this webinar really is to show our participants that we always have to start somewhere, okay? Especially to our new graduates. So can you tell us, coming from you, how did you really start your career? And what are the breaks that you got right after graduation? So maybe we'll start with also with Beng, and then followed by Edward.
Yes, San. It was quite a colorful journey for me. Just like what I mentioned, I started selling soaps. But what was interesting was that I entered right after college into a world where we as males were not familiar with. Again, as I mentioned, I was the person who was part of the launch or test market for Always, which is now Whisper. We were demonstrating, my colleagues and I in Davao City were demonstrating how the efficacy of the product was with blue goo. And we were doing this in front of all female purchasers. So it was tough. But again, what is more important was that during my interview in my long sleeves and slacks and leather shoes, I was asked to report in Bangkerohan, and I was asked to observe the selling of soaps in a van format. So which means you cannot just stand there and watch them execute it. You have to do it yourself so that you will understand how it all works, no? So I had to carry cases of Mr. Clean and Kame at that time, that's what we call it, Kamay, and then Mr. Clean, and then of course, it was good if ever we were carrying Always because it was lighter. But at that time, I was asking myself, why am I doing this since I graduated from Ateneo? And hopefully, I was supposed to land in a very comfortable situation for a graduate and start maybe my career in an air-conditioned room. And it dawned on me that, oh, this is life in its own reality. So that was something that was ingrained in my mind. And I was selling to people who were uneducated, which would mean grade school, high school, and even finished school. And they had a upper hand because they had the money. So that made sense to me that, okay, so the world doesn't operate on prestige of where you graduated from, but actually maybe the amount of money that you have in your pocket or in your bank account. So that was the first insight that I got. Then second is that when I was working with ice cream, I had the opportunity to attend a Christmas party that everybody was wearing black because they were protesting that the 29-year-old manager was managing an organization that was composed of veterans, and it was because they had a union that they had the guts to do that to me in Christmas, on a Christmas party with the president and the sales director. And again, it dawned on me and told myself, so it's not also where you came from as a company and the experience and the position that you had that will pull you off. It's really the respect that you earn from the people that you work with, and at the same time, how they perceive you to be their leader. And then the third one was that when I started interviewing graduates, as of course I assumed higher responsibilities, it was the quality of answers that you get from them that you choose a candidate, not because of their academic achievements, but what they have gathered through their own hard work and grit, perhaps, and understand where they're coming from. It's their narrative, it's their story. It's a story that if you really prepare well and really think it through, it becomes something that you best represent yourself. If you have a very clear story that you present to someone, you gain the appreciation and the respect of your interviewer. Because if you can piece all of this together, then you can clearly sell yourself that bring it on. Give me anything that you want me to do and I can pull it off. So perhaps that can be a best encapsulation of where I came from, what I experienced, and what I have been experiencing and gaining, no, from the interviews or from the sharing of the candidates that I have interviewed.
Okay, thank you very much, Beng. So Beng has already given us some small bits about how to ace your interviews and present yourself. And we will talk about more about that later, and we will really ask for their experience and bits of wisdom on how to clinch it. So we'd like to ask now, Ed, how about you, Ed? How did you start your career? Was it easy? Was it hard? Can you share to us what happened at the beginning of your career?
So first of all, I'd like to just clear, maghalo-halo ako ng Tagalog, Bisaya, English, just because I can. I have to say that refreshing siya na makahalo ka kasi a lot of times I speak to so many people with different languages. Sarap lang pag kausap mo taga Davao. So permit me to mix my languages. So nag-umpisa siya, we were in the 5th year college, nearing graduation. Unilever, so medyo karibal kami ni Beng, nasa Unilever. They have this, what they call Business Week, where they would train future managers of Unilever. So first time, pumunta sila ng Davao, Ateneo, they held interviews. I was interviewed, and they had one particular question about my board exam. Kasi chemical engineering nga. So tanong nila, do you plan to take the board? I said, yes. How do you plan to take it? I said, if you hire me, I intend to take a leave so I can take my board. And then they said, what if your manager will not allow you to take a leave? And I said, well, then I'll quit my job. And I explained that I cannot work for a company that will not support the growth of their employees. Obviously, I didn't get into Business Week. But 2 months later, may bumalik, galing sa Unilever, and said, hey, we have a position, are you interested? They interviewed me again, and the head of that division asked me exactly the same question. And I gave exactly the same answer. And this time I landed the job. And I think I raised that point because I started my career by being true to myself. And it's very important you're true to yourself. Yes, we want to put a good image of ourselves, pero kung hindi naman yung will make you happy, don't do it. So I was very clear that I said, I cannot compromise taking that board exam. So I did. So anyway, I got the job, and my first week in the job is very, very, something that shaped my entire career. So May 1 was a Monday. So I started my job on a Tuesday. So pasok ako, I was introduced to my boss. My boss said, tomorrow you're going to do a production trial for a new formula. Pinag-aralan ko, I studied it. I did the production trial. No? By Thursday morning, we were going through a batch. By the end of the day, I was throwing away a batch worth 100,000 pesos. So imagine, this was 1994. 100,000 was, and fresh graduate. So feeling ko, kakarating ko lang Manila, uwi na ako. Diba? I'll be fired. And that was a very important lesson. At the end of that, my boss asked me, so what happened? So I explained, this is where it went wrong, this is the problem, this is what we fix. And that was an important lesson. He told me that you will always have mistakes. You will not always be right. What's important is you know where you made a mistake and you can fix it. And that has shaped my career. And in fact, pag move on ko to different roles, I would always find roles where I can learn. I can make mistakes, and actually that's very important, to allow yourself to make mistakes, but then grow from it. And probably the other part, because we're talking about start of careers, my very first stint as a manager. So I was at that time 25 years old. So to give you an idea, so naging production manager ako, yung team ko, supposedly, their average number of years in service was longer than my age. So they've been working before I was born. So imagine mo yung profile, and I had to work with them. And I'm saying this also to reflect what Ben has mentioned, na kailangan, hindi mo pwedeng sabihin, hoy, graduate ako ng Ateneo, chemical engineering ako, may license ako, blah, blah, blah. I can tell you, they can make the plant shut down without you ever understanding why. Because while I have the theory, they have the wisdom. And what I've learned from that is never underestimate the value of experience. And rather than sabihin ko, oy, manager niyo ako, sabi ko, bago ako dito, bagong salta ako, turuan niyo ako. And I really spent time, being in the factory, shop floor, every day, asking questions, learning from them. Okay? And that, so I think those are the two things, make your mistakes and learn. Be humble enough to learn. Have the grit. Kasi a lot of times when we come in, we believe that, we've spent so much time, I've studied so hard, I must be good at it. The reality is, and again, I echo what Ben is saying, the reality is, people who have had experience are the ones who have the wisdom because they've made their own mistakes. So I think those are the three lessons. Be true to yourself, make mistakes and learn from it, and be humble enough to accept that people are better than you. With those three, that had moved my career to where I am, and very happy to be have done all of that. Mute.
Okay, so we're just starting, and yet we have so many nuggets of wisdom. So again, I'd like to personally thank our speakers for accepting our invitation to this webinar, a first of many to help our young graduates benefit from our alumni who have already gained in professional experience and wisdom. So I hope that our participants will be inspired by the stories of our speakers and also experience the same level of success that they now have. So to continue, we're going to shift some of the questions now because we are in a different time, okay, when you started. So let me ask the two gentlemen, with regards to the current labor market, can you give us an idea as to the trend in the labor market these days? What has changed? What industries are still hiring? And what industries do you foresee will not survive this pandemic? So now we're going to start with Edward and then followed by Ben.
So practically what's happening today, you'll see those in the manufacturing sector doing food, essential products like medicines are actually thriving because people, as you hunker down, in your quarantine, you do need to make sure you have the basic necessities. So medicine, food, household care. So definitely buhay na buhay yung industries na yun. Services where it requires personal and one-on-one has slowed down. But I think the most important part, and we're seeing even in our industry, is the shift. And in fact, the shift is so fast. I'll give you an example because we're also looking at digital innovations. And one of the things we were looking at just late last year was what you call telemedicine. Yung magkukonsulta ka sa doctor over the web or not the phone, but last year only, nakikita namin that regulations in many countries prohibited that, or at least very limiting. You can't actually do telemedicine, and it wasn't allowed in many countries. And then over the last few months, it has mushroomed, and you'll see in Philippines, in Singapore, all over the world, telemedicine has not only grown, it has been encouraged, and it has, it has grown like 500 times versus what it was. So on the one hand, and I think that's important, is you can't say simply as what's continuing, what's stopped. I think what's more important to ask is what has changed and where are things going? Because clearly, even outside Philippines and even outside Asia, it is shifting very, very fast. One thing that's really driving is technologies, and people are preparing to be ready for another pandemic in the future. So you'll see industries are trying to go into a pandemic-ready situation. So for example, yesterday we were already talking to some providers who are talking about new technologies and new systems for touchless supply chain. And that's, I think, where industries are very, very quickly moving. So who will not survive? It's not about the industry. It's about people are not able to adapt and change. So kung hindi mo kayang ilipat the way you operate into this new situation, those are the ones who won't survive, regardless of industry you're in. So definitely you need to learn how to be more digital, definitely. You need to learn to be more global, because you cannot rely on a single source of income or market. You need to learn how to go beyond your comfort zone. And those are the ones who will survive, which also means that the skill sets that are needed have changed dramatically as well because of the situation.
We're going to talk about the change of skills in a while. That was an international perspective, a global perspective. Now, we'd like to ask Ben, who is closer to home now and works for one of the biggest employer in our country. So Ben, what can you say about our labor market, especially in your industry?
Thank you, San. What's happening now is that the retail industry in general is really challenged. We are already seeing the micro and small as well as medium scale industries as well as entrepreneurs already crying for help. Let me put that into the right perspective in as far as the property management sector, which is where SM belongs. In as far as we have kiosks right now or short-term tenants who are already asking for pre-termination of their contracts. We also have those who can still hang on asking for concessions. 50% off for their rentals, 70% off. It's almost nearing give it for us for free. The restaurateurs and the different restaurant owners have already made their position letter to Mayor Sara saying that please allow us to increase dining in our restaurant so that we can survive. So it's really is very difficult for the small-time business people or entrepreneurs to survive. Now, in the mall industry, SM's direction is we have to be with our partners. We have to understand them. We have to make sure that we assist them in all their requests and in all their cry for help. So we are giving concessions. Yes, it's not indiscriminate, but we are always taking it one case at a time. We never deny any request for concessions nor for assistance. The challenge now is that in as far as hiring is concerned, in that part of the market, which is where I belong to, we are on freeze hiring, and we're even reviewing how we're being manned now. We have to be as lean as possible because business has been drastically reduced to almost 50%. That's reality. So of course, if you look at your financial statement, how can you survive with almost half of your revenue gone? Even 2021 looks very challenging. We're forecasting nearly 70% of our revenue to continue on because, of course, of the absence of a yet distributable vaccine or cure. Now, there are other industries, though, that are continuing to hire and recruit. We have them also in the malls. The BPOs, DXI, Teleperformance, and all the rest of the BPOs are continuously hiring, despite the challenges of COVID-19 contamination of their personnel, which means they have to clean up, they have to really sanitize their facilities. They continue on and they are thriving. They're continuously hiring as well. So we also have seen, just like what Ed mentioned, our Watson's business. By the way, Watson's is a sister company because we operate that part of the business in the Philippines. Watson's continues to operate, and they are also in need of people. Our supermarket, which is not a secret, continues to operate, and they have been growing enormously. From number 5 for SM Ecoland, they're now number 3 national. So those things are just pictures of there are extreme cases of positive and negative situations. Now, what I would like to also re-echo is the point of Ed in as far as online business is concerned. We are now driving cashless payment. We are really supporting the tenants in as far as making or finding ways and means for a promo, for Paymaya, for GCash, for different means of our platforms of payment, because that means touchless, contactless payments. Of course, we have the Grabs of the world, the Errands, the Food Panda of the world, wherein we only have logistics to provide the service of bringing the products to the customers, but without, as much as possible, the customers going to the mall. But of course, we have to bring the people back to the mall because foot traffic and vehicle count are drivers of sales for the mall. And lastly, I think what also Ed mentioned, which is very important, is touchless. We want to do business without the passing of our products from people's hands, because that means contamination. How we will do that is basically through the net, through online negotiations, transactions, and logistics. And by the way, logistics now is a necessity. It's a necessary, or it's a necessity segment in the market. People now in the logistics market are working 24 hours a day just to make sure all the demands are met with the different requirements of the market. That's it from my end for the meantime, San.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So certainly we are seeing a lot of changes in the labor market right now. So given all of that, it seems that the labor market now is even more competitive than ever. So given that, what exactly are employers looking for right now in applicants? And what competencies do I need to have so that I can be differentiated against all the other applicants? Maybe we can start with you, Sir Beng, again.
Okay. Um, there is a word we call as agility, right? We have to be agile. What you learn from college, maybe you might put it in your locker for the meantime and then move on to a different set of skills. What I'm saying is that if you are a person who can fly the plane and fix it, or drive a car and change the tires while driving, then you are the man. What I'm saying is that you have, of course, your own backbone. You have a very strong foundation of your basics. Basics would mean you have honesty, integrity, you are very willing to learn, and then you have to make sure you have the focus so that when you absorb the information, you make sure you are ready to get it as soon as it's asked. So the first skill that I believe that is very important now is that you have to be open. You have to be very willing to take on any responsibility at that, which means if you have to do the dirty work, by all means, your answer should be yes, tell me when and tell me what to do. The typical experience that I had, again, reflecting on my interviews with Ateneans, that is a rare answer. That's a rare quality that I get. Why? Because again, I myself was guilty of that when I had my first day. I'm a graduate of the Ateneo, maybe the most prestigious at my time. And why am I doing this? But please, wrap it up and put it in your pocket or maybe throw it away, because you have to start at the bottom. You really have to dirty your hands, because just like what Ed said, if people with experience will pull the plug, you don't know what happened simply because you didn't go through it. They could sabotage the plant and you don't know. They could sabotage a distributor operation and you don't know. They could come in with the truck full of stocks, and when you do your inventory and audit, it's full. But when you open it, it's full of styrofoam, it's full of stones and whatever, full of trash. And we'd experienced that. But you only know that when you went through that kind of selling. So again, the point is that you have to put aside all your biases. If you can unlearn and relearn things, better, because that is what is needed now. It is not your honors, it's not your degree even, but it's your attitude that will eventually drive your altitude. And that's very important. So to make it more concrete, be open. You will only know when you're there. You can never be fully prepared to take on a role that's given you until you're willing to take it. So maybe openness can be developed at home, maybe in school, I don't know. It's really up to you. But it's unlocking it that will really make you gain the trust and confidence of your employer, build your career, and at the same time, maybe an attitude that will pull you off as well in the different responsibilities that will be given to you. That's it, Norman. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, Sir Ben. So I like what you said, no, your attitude drives your altitude. Okay, so thank you very much. So can we hear from you, Sir Ed, about the same thing?
Thank you, Norman. Similarly, I think tama naman yung, what's important first of all is that in terms of competencies, what you needed a year ago and what you need now are similar or more or less the same. What has changed is the emphasis on certain competencies that are more critical. So start with number one is your ability to create relationships. Ang isang, sometimes in school we focus on the grades, but in fact what's equally important is your life outside of the classroom. Are you able to build relationships with friends, with other courses? Are you able to learn, able to create connections? And why is that critical and even more critical now? Kasi as a new entrant, in the last year, if you were a new hiree, somebody will take you around, i-introduce ka, mag-inuman kayo or mag-dinner out kayo. So there's an opportunity to create bond, and it's those bonds will help you as you grow. So ngayon is even more challenging is because of the situation where it is difficult to create physical bonds. Therefore, those who can remotely create those bonds have an advantage. And I think Beng will agree with me on this one. It's not, in a way, I'll rephrase what he said. It's not just what you know, it's more importantly who you know as you grow in your career. Because if you don't have those relationships, sure, you're the brightest in the lot, but the rest of the team will not want to work with you and nothing happens. So it's really your ability to create relationships. So what is more crucial now is your ability to create remote relationships. So the more friends you create before, and especially when you start your work, the more advantage you have. Secondly, and especially for fresh graduates, in a way, you're not an advantage, but in a way, the playing field is leveled for you. Kasi dati, pag nag-apply ka, kalaban mo may experience. Diba? Ngayon, pare-pareho tayo walang experience in, especially in e-commerce, in digital transformations. All these things are new to everybody. So biglang naging level playing field. So take that to your advantage and saying, okay, yes, I have less experience, but the next guy also has less experience. But then you don't have biases like the other guy. So take that, and I think just sharing also, echoing what Ben mentioned about being open, it's also about not having biases. Always when you enter a role or try to apply for a role, don't have a bias. Meaning, huwag mo isipin you're the best, huwag mo isipin na alam ko na yan. Because that's the first mistake and the last mistake you'll probably make. It will be the beginning of the end for you right away. So it's really about being open, like Ben said, and be humble enough to say, okay, I don't know, but I will learn. And I think again, it's just sharing a lot of the lessons I've learned. One of the things I was taught early on by my first boss, pag hindi mo alam, don't say I don't know. But don't pretend to know as well. Okay? Don't say, no, don't make up answers because they'll catch you that quick. However, your right answer will be, okay, I don't know now, but I will find out. And that's the attitude you need to have. Parang, okay, I don't have the experience or I don't have the knowledge, but I will learn and I will learn very quickly. So I think those are the kinds of competencies you will need to have. Ability to create relationships, okay? Openness to new experiences, and the humility to say that you don't know today. Thank you.
See, so thank you very much, sir. So I like what you guys are saying about the competencies. Now, sir, given all of these competencies that are needed right now, do you think that resumes and online interviews are still relevant in today's job market, or when you search for jobs? Are these things still relevant for now? Let's start with you, sir Ed.
Even more relevant kasi your opportunity to have a face-to-face is less. So, iyan lang yung impression na mabibigay mo. And remember, and I don't know for me, typically, I will already have an impression within the first 5, say 10 minutes of the interview. So how you present yourself on paper, how you present yourself at the beginning of that online interview is even more critical. And especially, after you've done 100 interviews, you start, I know it's not good, but the reality is a lot of interviewers start to get jaded. Titignan yung papel mo and say, I read this before. There's some bull behind that. So, and that's why writing a good resume is even more critical now. Presenting yourself properly in your first online interview is even more critical. And competencies that, and what we would originally know, we need to relearn a lot, unlearn and learn a lot of things in order to be effective in online interviews. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Sir Ed. Sir Ben, can we hear from you? Are resumes and online interviews still relevant now?
I totally agree. Ed really put it very clearly. It's your first step. It's your first step to the door, right? Once you have a very clearly well written, well edited, without any grammatical error, without any wrong spelling, without all the possible errors that you could commit, then that's the very clear first step. Now, we have to realize that the resume is the only way for you to be known. It's like a post in social network, right? You have to post so that people will know that there is such. And then after that, then you make sure that once you get a call or you get a letter that you have to report for an interview, you prepare for it. Some people can get away with inconsistencies during interviews. Inconsistencies would mean they could really take it back and it will really sound as if it was an honest mistake. But again, mind you, only a few can pull it off if it's really a very sincere mistake. Make sure, just like I think Ed mentioned this earlier, your answer in your first interview would be the same answer in your second and third and your last interview. Because if it will be varying answers and you cannot tie it up because of a series of lies, sorry. And I think what is also important is that the resume that you present, there will always be 1,001 ways to create it or to make it. But as long as you constantly update it, you constantly review it, what would best represent you, then that's your work of art. That's from my end.
Okay, thank you for that. No, but I think our new graduates would want to know the specifics. You're saying that they should have a good resume, but what really should be included in a resume? And besides, what's the difference between a CV, a curriculum vitae, as against a resume? Employers, what do they expect? A CV or a resume? And again, let me emphasize, if you can give us what should be inside it, okay? Should it tell all? Or what are just some things that, more, they say less is more, something like that. So maybe we can start again with Bang and then with Ed, followed by Ed.
Sure. Okay. It's like the elevator pitch. Less is more, which means highlight your best. Again, just like the Jesuits do it. 3 things. No more than 3 things that you can highlight. Then second is that I think even before you write your resume, when you're still studying, which is again associated to Ed's point, try to build relationships, try to build as many leadership roles in your extracurricular activities so that it will be the standout and the highlight of your resume. So it's not just that thing that you craft. It's the things that you make sure will be the content of your resume. But of course, since we're talking about graduates, you cannot really turn back the hands of time. But my point is if you can even highlight specific experiences in it. I even remember a colleague of mine who used to attach a lot of certificates in his resume as an attachment so that you could see that this guy really went through a lot of trainings and even achievements because it highlights that your experience is rich. So maybe, just maybe, your project or your feasibility study is about something, include it. Because sometimes that becomes a reflection of who you are and what you can achieve. So resume or CV, actually, it's really the HR department that does that. They just give me the short list and then I start talking to these people. And that's very true. The first 5 minutes or less, it's how you look, it's how you stand, it's how you dress, it's how you address me that will already create the impression. If you cannot look at me straight in the eye, then maybe this guy has ADHD, no? But on the side, if this guy cannot look me straight in the eye, how can I feel that this guy is that sincere or that honest in what he's going to tell me? It's packaging as well. But going back, yes, your resume or your CV is still important. Please put in there what would best represent you in relation to the job opening.
Okay, thank you, Beng. How about Ed? Your perspective, please.
So first off, actually, in the industry, the reality is interchangeable in CV and resume. We don't really care, to be honest. It's what's inside that's what matters. So first of all, so wag niyo masyadong problemahin yung ano ilagay sa taas. Second is be genuine, be real. When a lot of, especially fresh graduates, I see a lot of these resumes or CVs that you'd think that they've solved world peace. Ang dami-dami nilang ginawa. Be real, be genuine, don't exaggerate. If your experience is you participated in a reach out program, it's a reach out program. You did not change the world. But that's relevant because you're talking about your own experience. What's more important is ano yung role mo dun. Highlight what you've done. And I think sometimes masyado tayo nakafocus sa accolades that we received or titles that we have. At that stage of your career, and you're talking to somebody, for example, that 25 years of experience, diba? One doesn't compare. But you can come in and say, actually, these are the experiences I've had that demonstrate my ability to learn, my ability to create relationships, my drive. So those are ang ilalagay mo dun sa papel are what will show you as a person. Okay? And you want to keep it short. And I like, thank you for saying that, Beng, yung rule of threes. And in many, whether in art, the rule of threes is always just, if you forget everything about this whole webinar, just remember the rule of three. Everything always comes in three. So dapat, pag gumawa ka ng resume, what are the top 3 things you want people to know about you? That's it. No more than 3. Okay? Pag lumagpas ka doon, nagsistart na yung, and they even have a study about this, that the maximum a person can remember of anything is 5, maximum. But the ideal is 3. So keep that in mind. Whenever you write, whenever you talk, it's always about 3 things that people will remember about you. And that's the resume or CV that you're writing about. What do you want people to remember about you? The other thing, very important, that a lot of us ignore is wag kang gumawa nung resume na photocopy tapos i-distribute mo to 100 companies. It shows your lack of sincerity that you want to apply to my company, as an example. I-personalize mo. Make sure that, if you need to make some tweaks in your resume, that will, you adjust it a little bit to adapt. So for example, ang nag-a-apply ka for, let's say, logistics. So hindi mo naman pwedeng i-highlight yung award mo for essay writing contest, di ba? So i-adapt mo dapat. And that also shows, kasi pag titingin kami ng resume, tinitingnan namin, did you put an effort in what you're doing? Okay? Or wala kang pake, basta i-distribute mo and hopefully you hit 1. The more targeted you are, the better it is. So, and we'll come to that in a while, but do your homework. Who am I applying to? Okay? What is it that they're looking for? If they're already saying, I need a team player, tapos lahat nung nilalagay mo is about being an individual contributor, di ba? Off na kaagad siya. So, take time. I think what I've seen in many cases, and where those that really come up the list are those who took the time to communicate to me, to take the effort. I'm taking an effort to talk to you, to interview you. I expect you to take an effort to prepare for it. So, or even read your resume. So yun yung keep it. I think when coming back to the Jesuit education, it's just simple respect. You want me to take the time to look at your profile, you at least take the time to write a profile for me. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, so thank you. we were talking about resume, but that's getting inside the door, no? So once you're in and you get the interview, so what are some of the most common interview questions and how can they be best answered? What about the elevator pitch? How can they be of help to an applicant? And what are some tips you can give in making an effective elevator pitch? What the heck is elevator pitch, Ed? Can you tell us? And then followed by Ben.
So, medyo ano siya, no, Western cliche. Typically, when you ride in it, you go into a building, like for example, our office is on the 18th floor. Therefore, I have, from the time I'm waiting for the elevator, my boss comes over or future boss comes over, I have from the ground floor to the 18th floor, that amount of time to tell him something that I want him to convince him. By the time he gets out of that elevator, he must already be convinced. Kasi yan lang yung time ko with my boss. So that's an elevator pitch, literally in an elevator. Meaning, are you able to communicate what you want to say in the shortest possible amount of time? So that's an elevator pitch. And that's crucial before I go to your other question about, what are the typical questions. It's important that in a very brief statement, okay, in one paragraph, kung gusto mo mag-essay tayo, what is it that you want your interviewer to know about you? Okay? And again, like I said earlier, forget about everything else, just remember the rule of three. So that's my elevator pitch. Okay? You start with, if they forget about your very long resume of 5 pages, ano yung one paragraph na hindi niya pwede kalimutan? And it describes you as an applicant, why you are best suited for that job. That is your elevator pitch, talking about yourself as a person, about your experience, about what you can contribute. So that is your short one paragraph elevator pitch. And segueing, because that will also influence the kind of questions you will get. So if you're going to focus on your credentials, then the questions you get are about credentials. But if you talk about yourself, then you influence them to ask questions about your experience. And that's the best if they start to ask you that. The good questions typically are when they say, what were your experiences about a failure that you encountered? What did you do? Okay. What were your experiences about? And a lot of times, this is how the good questions, and I'm not saying everybody interviews this way, but those who practice interviewing will look at your experiences and your behavior on how you reacted to such an experience or situation. So it's typically situational. So keep in your mind before going into an interview to prepare yourself on what are the situations, experiences that I can talk about. Okay? And they would like you to be specific about it. So the question, when they ask, what is your experience? Don't say, oh, usually when you're in a classroom and in a situation like this, be specific. A year ago, we were having a debate in our English class, and so it has to be something that is concrete. Otherwise, you may create an impression that you're just making it up. So generally, it's all about experiences and your attitude and behavior on how you responded to those situations. Thank you. Beck?
Okay, please, Ben, go ahead.
I'd rather not focus on what are the typical questions, because that one you can read in the internet, but rather focus on how do you encounter, what would you say, or how would you react to a specific question that you didn't really see coming. And an example of that is, if you're looking for a person who's strategic, the question that might be thrown at you is, how do you see yourself 5 years from now? How do you see yourself 10 years from now? Or maybe 20 years from now? And if you're a person who haven't really thought about it, because you're really living on a day-to-day and here and now, then you cannot really give a picture that's clear enough. And if ever you're asked to answer such a question, the best approach is that you have to use your 5 senses. Because if you do, and if you did your homework and really think about it, then you can really relate to it very much in such a way that it becomes very real. Even your interviewer can see, feel, taste, and even touch it. No. The second point is that, again, it goes back to your experience in either in college or in life. Experiences, just like what Edward mentioned, situations and experiences. It's very easy to be a generalist. Just like, you see, if a person is like this and like that, because that's also what is taught in school, or maybe you can read it. But when you are very specific, as in, this happened yesterday as I was walking down San Pedro Street with, of course, my face mask on, it becomes something that the interviewer will see, okay, this really is a true to life experience. And then the insight that you pull out of that is also equally critical. So in an interview, if you can be as experiential as much as you can, then that's it. The third point is that it's always how you sell yourself. If you can create an impression that you really had that experience and that extensive an experience at your young age, then you are the candidate they're looking for. And it's not, again, something that you can do and decide to do today. It is something that makes you, if ever you are fond of engaging people, interacting with people, listening to stories, and even telling your own stories, then most of the time, these are the successful people who will get the role. But again, I'm not a technical guy. If you're applying for a technical role, then that's a different thing, because the person or the interviewer will really be asking you technical questions that's very appropriate to the opening. But as you move up, or maybe as you are exposed to different positions or your line of interest that will be your position that you're applying for, then it has to really be experience-based. And of course, the narrative and the story that you will tell will be the critical point that you have to share with the person who's interviewing you. That's it.
Okay, so thank you so much. No, we asked for volunteers earlier and to do a mock interview, and there was no taker. Are you overwhelmed with our speaker? But guys, okay, graduates, this is your time to you have an elevator. It's going up to the 18th floor. And we have two distinguished speakers here, alumnus. No? So we have the Vice President of SM, and we have an international director. So I'm going to challenge now, instead of asking for volunteers to do a mock interview, I'm going to request our speakers, okay, let's set it up and let's come up with the brand of Ateneo. We're going to challenge our participants here. So let's pretend we're going to conduct an interview here and now. And I'm challenging the participants to answer. This is like, give us a typical question you will ask in an interview. And what position are you looking for? And we're going to challenge now our participants. How are you going to answer this if you were given the opportunity to be interviewed by the SM Vice President and the Director of Sanofi Adventist, okay? So I'm challenging you, Ateneans, and we actually did this really for you. So I'm going to start with Beng. Okay, Beng, can you give us a position that you're looking for? And what kind of questions will you be asking for this kind of position? Can we do that?
Okay, sure. I'm looking for a tenant relations assistant. So a tenant relations assistant is an entry-level position, which means this person will be engaging a lot with the tenants, which means the people who rent the shops. It will range from National Bookstore, Jollibee, to Buko Express. No? So the range is national, even global. For example, mango. So we're talking about people who have international experience interviewing you, or there's a need for you to engage them. So the typical question is, how would you describe yourself so that the people in Mango will believe that you're competent?
Okay, so here, graduates, we have a question, and who knows, this might be a true position. So I'm asking for volunteers who would like to answer. Just turn on your microphone or request your microphone to be turned on. And we're going to challenge some of our graduates here. Ateneans, would you like to answer the question? Any takers? Or just put in the chat box if you wish to answer that question. And then let's see how you will do. Go ahead. Okay, no volunteers? Okay, so if that is the case, come on, Ateneans. Come on. Show the brand. Show the brand. No takers? Okay, so in that case, if there are no takers, you're losing the opportunity now to talk to the Vice President and the Director for Sanofi. So if there are no volunteers, so we will now go to the forum. First, I'm just going to read the question from Francis Jasmine C. AB Psychology 2020. Her question, she posted, I had an experience in an interview via phone where I was quite nervous and anxious and was not able to ask some of my follow-up questions and clarifications. Would it be a wrong move to contact the HR staff to ask my follow-up questions and clarifications? Would it affect your impression on the employer? Okay, so Ben, you can answer first and then followed by Ed.
The answer is yes. It will affect positively. Why am I saying that? Because that means you have the initiative to rectify, since, of course, at that time, it might be your first interview. And at the same time, it will create an impression that you're really interested with the role and the position. But also a tip, if ever you get nervous, just 2-3 deep breaths. And it changes your paradigm, your perspective. Because again, scientifically, it provides oxygen to the brain. Because your fast heartbeat deprives you of that. And that, of course, takes a lot of energy from the body. So, deep breaths. And again, as interviewers, we understand that you're nervous, you're anxious, and it's your first time, and then deep breaths will do. Because we can see, because sometimes the lips vibrate, your hands shake. So we understand totally. So asking or requesting that, can you just give me time? I'm nervous. That's okay, because we also went through that.
Okay, Ed, how about you?
Exactly. So first, on the question itself, definitely it's positive because it means you're interested. So, and if you say, I actually wanted to ask a question, I was a bit nervous, this is my first time, can I ask? But also explain why, which is good. I think that demonstrates your humility and demonstrates your eagerness to really want to be there because you're coming back. And that's a very positive note. Now, in the future though, what I would suggest is practice. Now, I'm showing you, okay, sorry, hindi makita. I have over 20 years experience and even today I still practice. I make a presentation, I still practice. I rehearse, I get a friend or get somebody to, I do my presentation or I do my spiel. Practice, practice, practice. There's nothing wrong, and in fact, it's good to practice because it relaxes you. Obviously, pag nandun ka na, wag naman yung parang memorize. But the practice is about getting your confidence to talk over a phone, especially if you're doing a Zoom interview. Practice, practice, practice is really important. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. But just, again, to come back, in fact, you should always come back, whether to ask more questions or to just simply say thank you. Okay, it demonstrates your eagerness to be part of the organization.
Okay, we have here a question from Gilbert Campos, MBA Apex 2. So in job postings that requires a certain number of years of experience in one field, does the HR strictly filter the applications based on that requirement? Or do they also consider those with lesser years of experience? Ed?
So generally, yes. If you're asking HR, medyo meron siyang checklist, hindi ka umabot, sorry, done. Yes, therefore, you need to be very clear. If you're applying for something where you have less experience, the first question you ask yourself, am I competent enough even with my limited experience? If the answer is you believe you're competent enough, okay, I mentioned earlier about rewrite your resume or CV such that it highlights why, even if you have only 3 years and not 5 years experience, why you are competent enough to do the job. Okay. I think it's respect as well. They already said, I want you to have 5 years. You're coming in with 3. Don't just assume that they'll do it simply because nag-apply ka eh. Okay. That means that they're looking for somebody with enough experience with that kind of job to be able to carry out the work. Typically, they put number of years experience because they want somebody to hit the ground running. Hindi siya, yung learning curve is very short and steep. That's what they're looking for. So that's therefore what you talk about, to say, hey, yes, I don't have 5 years, but I can do the job very quickly. My learning curve, and I've demonstrated that I can do the learning process is very short for me, and I can show you how. So yun yung way mo to respond to that. But yes, they will typically, when they say it's 5 years minimum, it's not because it's the number of years, it's because of the caliber of experience and the quality of the person joining that they're looking for.
How about Ben? Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, Ed really answered it well. My addition lang is that if ever you do want to really go for that job, then that's the application letters role. You have to really create a picture, present a picture that will convince the person who's reading it that your lack of experience is worth reconsidering because of this counter proposal that you have. Kasi that's the only way for you to get it if, again, it's a highly technical role or maybe experience really count. And secondly, if ever you do have the relationships, the connections, it's also whom you know in the company that will grant you your way in for a possible interview just to try it out. So that's the best advice I could give.
Okay, thank you. We also have here...
I have one more question here.
Okay, sige, go ahead.
Okay, so the question is from Shaira Ventosa, BSA 2020 graduate. Given that we are going digital, is having a decent profile outside of a resume or CV, like your Facebook profile particularly, will it have an impact on how the employer will pick a candidate? So can we start with the survey?
Yes, a big yes. We do look at your Facebook account. We stalk. And most importantly, it's what you put into your CV. It's the picture that you make or you use as your profile pic. Again, If you talk about SM, we're very conservative. Any revealing kind of photo of you will speak loudly about you. If you are that conservative type, then that would be a bias that is in favor of the company you're applying for. And at the same time, if that is the way you express yourself, then please, that's who you are. But make sure also that once you express yourself, you have your own set of boundaries and norms, and don't go beyond it. Because if you do, you are now presenting the inconsistency side and character of you. So that's my 2 cents worth.
So let me start with an international answer. So medyo careful kami. There are certain countries where we're legally not allowed to do that. So we're careful in doing that. However, having said that, yes, definitely your profile is important. Okay, but I will put a very big but on it. It's not about how you present yourself only. It's about presenting the true self. Hindi pwedeng mag-create ka ng mukha kang, and I've seen this, they go into LinkedIn, put a very, a professional picture on a suit, tapos pag tinignan mo nakita mo siya sa Facebook, yung picture niya basag or, okay, you get the picture. Then you're not creating a consistent profile of yourself. You need to be true to yourself. I'll give you an example, and I'll use mine as an example. In my entire 20 plus years of career, I've only worn a tie once in my life. And that's my image. That is the persona I want to project. And therefore it's consistent. Wherever you look, you will not see me with that, but you don't see me with, so I create an image because that's who I believe I am, and that is the one I project. Therefore, when you create your image, it has to reflect who you are. And I think it's very important just to highlight, it's the small details that matter. A lot of times, hindi natin siya minsan ini-ignore natin, and just coming back to what Beng earlier said, it's the grammar, it's the spelling, it's the punctuation. I know it sounds very, very small, but the reality is, it's the small stuff that matters. Okay? Because how do you stand out if you're not being, detailed about how you present yourself? Why will I, as an interviewer, why will I need to go deeper? Kasi pinapakita mo pa lang sa harap, hindi ka na nag-aayos. Why will I then want to go deeper? So yes, your profile picture, what you write, what you show, and in the social media world, if I type, somebody's name, if I type Norman Padilla in Google, tapos medyo weird yung pictures na nakikita ko, medyo mag-iisip na ako, parang ito ba yung profile na gusto ko? It doesn't mean it's bad, okay? To be very clear. I think that's also important. Like Beng said, tingnan mo rin, is my, the way I want to project myself and the way I behave, does that fit in the organization that I want to join? Kasi when you try to create a picture of yourself, yes, it encourages certain companies to want to look at you, but at the same time, it also excludes certain companies as well. So you need to be conscious of that. There is no one single profile that everybody will want to look at. Okay, so it's the package that you want to create, and therefore, but you need to be consistent with that package and aware that somebody will like it and somebody may not like it, and it's fine.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Ang ganda ng mga answers niya. Just to share a little bit, I remember yung sinabi mo, sir, about details. Because I remember the very first application letter I submitted when I started my career, may wrong spelling, may misspelling. Of course, I didn't get the job, but what happened was that it forced me to learn how to really go over everything that I have to give them before I give it to these companies. So it made me a little more detail-oriented. So things like that really help you. Now, there's another question here for both of you. Do your respective companies spend for professional background investigators to gather more info on certain candidates on your shortlist? This question comes from Sir Biggs Villegas. Okay.
I can take it first. So depende rin. We definitely do some basic background check. It's required, but it depends on the level. So the higher you go, the more they'll actually check around, and they'll ask. But we definitely do ask, to somebody to corroborate what you're saying. To say, is this person really who he is? Is he really employed in this company? And for my case, I've received a lot of those, doing background checks and asking me about a certain person, what is my view of them. And to be fair, I've seen that is actually sometimes the clincher. Bago lang, today's Saturday. Last Tuesday, I had a background check discussion. So somebody was wanting to hire somebody that I know. And so we had a conversation, explained my experience with the person. And actually, I was told afterwards that was the clincher that she got the job. So the point also, and I think I just want to emphasize that, and what Ben said, is who you know, because these are the people who will help build your story. Hindi lang sarili mo. So kung sinasabi mong I'm a people person, I create relationships, tapos nag-background check, ayan, ang hirap kausap niyan, hindi yan team player. Tapos ka. So that's important. Ben?
Yeah, we do. It depends on the level. That's right, just like what Ed said. And it's more of an case-to-case basis, because if we send something that is already inconsistent, then that becomes a lead for us to pursue further investigation. A very recent experience is that there was a person who applied for mall manager position. Then when we started digging deeper into the resume, the school that the person graduated from was not really a university, but it was stated as a university. It was actually a small college. And then when we even looked into the background of that school, it was not an accredited school by DepEd. So when you see that, then the person starts presenting the person's self in a way na I came from a very prestigious school. Then you start to question the integrity of the person. Why are you packaging yourself to be such when actually when we dig deeper into the background of the school, it's not. So, diba, you see inconsistencies simply because you have an initial lead and then you pursue it. And yeah, to answer that, yes, we do, but on a case-to-case basis.
For our last question, we also have here alumni who are in between jobs. So we also have, basically this was for the new graduates, but we have alumni here who are also looking for opportunities. So how could they prepare themselves for a new career? What would be the path that they should do? Still, do the submit resumes, do online interviews. What would you advise them, the alumni who are in between jobs?
Who goes first?
Beng, sorry, Beng, you go first. Sorry,
Okay.
Beng.
No problem. So we were actually waiting for the queue. Anyway, the advice is that do not wallow. You do not feel sorry. I went through that. So initially, I felt so bad. I felt I can't move on, or I felt I'm not that good enough because I'm not getting any calls or any feedback. But that is the time also for you to reflect, for you to look into where did you go wrong in your career before, or what are the opportunities that you did not avail of, and then at the same time build on your passion. build on where you're good at, because that becomes again a very good narrative for you to tell to any prospective employer that will get you, because that means this person can easily bounce back. This person is resilient, and this person would definitely be an asset to the company that you're applying for.
Okay, Ed?
Just building on that, build on what you're good at. I think it's also very important to know yourself. And when I say know yourself, so first is know where you're really good at, know where your weaknesses are. And this is something a lot of times we hear that you strengthen your weakness. That is a fallacy, I have to tell you right away. Okay, there's no truth. The best you can do when you try to improve a negative is you become neutral. You cannot make a negative a positive. So that's an important thing to recognize for yourself. There are some things that the most you can do is just neutralize. Pero when you know your strengths and weaknesses, that tells you, sige, saan ba ako pwedeng pumunta? Because true to what Ben said, it's all about your passion. If you're not passionate about it, maybe it's not the right thing. And ako, I believe, and I have to say this from a Jesuit point of view, and my faith really drives me even in my career. So pag sinabi ng Diyos, hindi yan para sa'yo, it's because may sinasabi siyang, there might be something else for you. Listen, pay attention. And that, in order to know what that is, you need to be aware of yourself. It's about self-awareness. Believe that there is something there for you, but follow that passion. Pumunta ka dun. And it will not be that easy always. Especially in these times, pag in between ka, mas mahirap. But typically, the reason it's difficult is because you created expectations and biases for yourself. You're saying, nadaanan ko na yan, I've had X number of years experience, I will not start from the bottom, or I will not shift. You created so many limitations for yourself. And the reality is, the only person stopping you is yourself. Because the more you're aware of yourself, the more you realize, hey, maybe nga, dapat dito yung pupuntahan ko. And maybe I need to start, again, because maybe I took the wrong path, which is not good for me. Again, it's about being self-aware, being humble, praying for guidance, and believing that there's always something there for you, as you move forward.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we have one more question here. We have last two questions. This one is from Francis Jasmine C. of AB Psychology. I have searched for job listings under entry level, requiring a level of experience. As a fresh graduate, this is quite intimidating and confusing. Should I still try to apply for the job? Okay. So can we go, Sir Ben, can you go first with that?
Sure. Okay. Again, the point about having the experience is not, again, necessarily associated with that job that you're applying for. But if it states to be such, then it will be a long shot. My point being is experience usually involves your past track record in as far as typing, composing, collaborating with other functions, etc. Then that can easily be substantiated by your extracurricular or maybe even in your academic life. But if it's very related to your specific job, then I don't think it's for you.
Okay, Sir Ed?
So, one very important thing to remember, kasi and especially pag bago tayo, we have this assumption that yung gumawa ng job requirement, pinag-isipan ng maayos, sinulat na ng maayos. Sometimes, and just being frank about it, employers sometimes also don't know what they want. And they may just write, and I know it's not nice to say, but the reality is, hindi perfect yung mga employers, and especially HR people. May checklist na siya, lalagyan natin, may experience, malay mo. But, so you need to dig deeper and understand, ano ba yung hinahanap nila? Are they looking for, so there are a couple of hints that you want to look at. So, is it a new position that they're creating? So kung new position, wala silang experience, remember. So they're looking for somebody to help them learn. Okay? Is it a position that somebody is leaving or has left and they want to fill? So they want somebody to hit the ground running. So kaya kailangan ng experience because they have no time to teach somebody. But in many cases, it's a normal succession plan. Hindi siya critical or urgent role. That's where you can start thinking, sige, kailan crucial ba talaga? If, for example, I was looking for a database administrator, okay, sabihin ko, experience in database management, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, it's database. Right? How crucial can that be? I will still need to teach you my system. So the reality is, kung nagkaglagay ako na 3 years experience, you can always challenge and say, actually, I have my experiences of similar, but then will apply and I can learn very quick. So it doesn't mean it will apply to all. Like Beng said, sometimes it's really not for you. Okay? But the important thing is learn. And I think we haven't gone, one really important thing you need to do, and we haven't mentioned yet, is please, 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 do your homework. Okay? Read about the company you're applying for. Who are they? Okay? What are, you need to understand. You cannot just jump in and throw. And that's the biggest turn off I always have when I start with an interview, because I start interview differently. I start with saying, what are your questions? And the biggest turn off I always have when they say, ano yung company nyo? Ano yung ginagawa nyo? Okay, goodbye. Sorry, next. It's just very basic, it's respect and just come on. You're trying to join my organization and you have no clue who I am and who we are. Do your homework, which then comes back to your question on it's intimidating, but a lot of times learn about it. Who's the company? Who's the person hiring? What's the position like? Ask around. Ano ba tong sinasabi nilang van salesman? Ano ba yan? What does it mean? Ano ba tong database administrator? What does that mean? And then learn and then decide for yourself, okay, ito ba yung gusto ko? Do I think I can fit? Do I think I can work on it or not? Do your homework. Hindi porke nakagraduate ka na tapos na yung homework. Okay? In fact, homeworks is if there's anything that you need to bring from your, how many years of education, you never stop doing your homework. Okay? And the people who do their homeworks are the ones who succeed.
Okay, so for our last question, before we thank everybody for coming, we have here from Lawrence Igar, BS Chemical Engineering 2020. What can you say about the idea of career mismatch that most of the fresh graduates experience, especially in this time of pandemic? We start with Ed, followed by Beng.
So, thank you. That's perfect because pag tinanong mo ako ngayon, ano yung trabaho ko, I have nothing to do with chemical engineering today. Okay? I started there, but actually most of the rest of my career has been outside. So, what is a career mismatch? I think there's no such thing as a career mismatch. There is such a thing as motivation mismatch. If it's something, and again, if you're this several during the whole time we were discussing, what is the most important word that we keep saying is passion. If you are passionate about something, there's no such thing as a mismatch. It becomes a mismatch kasi hindi ka masaya. Not because I studied 5 years of chemical engineering that I cannot be a supply chain director or I cannot handle distribution, or I cannot do marketing. Nothing to do with that. The education that, and you have to remember, especially coming from Ateneo de Davao, you have to remember that the thing that we should bring along are the trainings that they gave us, the Jesuit education, which is about the values, which is about the discipline, which is about the training. That's what you bring along. And the only time I would say if it's a mismatch, if it goes against your passion, it goes against your values. That's the only mismatch there is in the world. Everything else, and again, don't, sometimes that's a cue to you to say, hey, maybe I'm taking too much stock of my own education. If you're doing your passion, if it is within your values, there is no such thing as a mismatch.
Okay, Bang, go ahead.
Yes. Okay. The mismatch concept is actually quite subjective as a term. I'm saying this because when I started my career with PNG, we even took in AV philosophy graduates. So how can a salesperson who's a philosophy graduate be a good salesperson? But again, it's not really what you graduated from. And some of you might even be forced to take a course, which is not really your passion. But again, if you look at the qualifications and if you know that what you have inside you and the core values perhaps, or even your core skills matches that, then I don't think it's the course that will have to match the job role, but rather you taking that kind of interview. Kasi I'm taking this answer coming from the question for most of the fresh graduates. So that's my point of view. It's really up to you, and it's really how you understand yourself and the qualification. Because the HR in general, the HR team are supposed to be people with the competencies of looking at your profile and the job requirement. And if they see that there's a mismatch, then goodbye. But there are those, of course, that will just look at keywords and look at and understand where they're coming from, and then there's a mismatch already. So if you really like the role, if you really like the job, then it's really up to you to apply for it, and then to create the illusion that there's a mismatch might even be only existing in your mind, not really much with the company that you're applying for. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
Okay. Sam, you want to say something?
Maybe before we finally end, words of wisdom from our speakers. We start with age first. Ben, go ahead, please.
Okay. Few words would mean take a look at yourself, always understand what you want. It will come out naturally. There will be no extra effort in pursuing what you want. Apply for a job. And then secondly, once you have an opportunity for an interview, it will show. The interviewer, especially if that is the final interviewer, then the person would definitely sense you're fit for the role. Those are my words.
Ed, go ahead, Ed.
So first, my important passion, kasi I always believe that Ateneo de Davao produces quality, quality people. Beyond that's the simple education, it is the values that we bring. Ito, and I guess this is my personal passion. I really want people to be driven to really say we want to excel. Wherever I go around the world, whether it's in France or Morocco or whatever, I'm proudly, when they say, where did you come from? I come from a town in Davao City, and I graduated from Ateneo. I am very proud of that. And I want you guys to remember that we can, and we do make differences around the world, not just in Davao. So I want you to, and the reason why I gladly accepted this is to try and tell people that we do and we make difference. And I want you to be inspired to really drive yourself and make that difference. But be proud that you come from, Ateneo de Davao. Even then, pag-graduate ko pala, pag-umpisa ko sa Manila, I can tell you I was mistaken many times to be coming from UP. And I flat out say, sorry, hindi ako UP, Ateneo de Davao ako. Anong kalo niyo sa akin? I am really proud, and I want you guys to be proud, but not in a sense of angat ako. It's because we want to show the quality of people we are. So first, I want you to believe in that. Okay, number one. Number two, it is within your control. It is within your hands. Believe, that if it is really something you want, God will show you a way to get it. And I think, and I have to emphasize, and I'm really happy that this is, I can do this because this is Ateneo. Remember to pray. Minsan, ano lang natin yun but isip natin ng school after tapos na. Prayer is critical because, God will always bring you to where you should be. Believe in yourself, believe in the power of God. Dadalhin ka doon kung saan mo gusto. It will be very tough. It will be very tough, I will tell you. Ako, I'm actually a small guy. Tapos makakausap ko, lalaki yung tao. I believe in myself. And I learn, I make mistakes. I do better. And I encourage you to know yourself, make mistakes, but do better. Okay? Be honest to yourself. And I'm sure, you will find your path. Thank you.
San, just to add, very similar to the question pala kanina, I just thought of this. Be a class of your own. That is what sui generis is all about, right? Which means if you do something, do it with passion. Do it like your life depended on it. And that will really show the kind of person that you are. Don't be a mediocre person. Don't say na pwede na yan. Because again, that's your outlook in life. And if you want to succeed, chances are you will not with that kind of perspective. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much to all of you. And for everyone, we have now come to the end of this webinar. So I would like to personally thank, in behalf of the Ateneo Career Center and Alumni Hub, and in behalf of the ACCAH, the Ateneo Blue Knight Association, we'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out in coming here and joining this webinar. So I hope that everyone was able to gain a lot of insight, okay, from this webinar, which we hope will turn into development of your grit so that you can grow and finally give back to the community, which is, again, going back to what our speakers have said, this is really the tenet of why we are in Ateneo, or why we are formed here in Ateneo. So before everybody leaves, don't leave yet, I have a couple of announcements muna. First, we will be issuing e-certificates for this webinar. So later on, I will be giving you the link to the evaluation form that you have to fill up muna before we'll give you the certificates. Here's the link you have to go to for this one. Go to this link and fill out the evaluation form. And after you fill out the evaluation form, we will give you the certificate. Please allow us about 3 to 5 days. We will email the certificates to you. All right. Okay, so kindly take a picture of that, take a screenshot of that. And before we all leave, I would like to invite everyone for a group singing of the Ateneo Blue Knight song.
For Christ King flies strong and true, with flashing steel and ringing shield, let us sweep our battlefield. With flying swords high and swords in hand, come Blue Knights, take your stand. Thy heart with virtue strength renewed, in Our Lady's white and blue. Let all unite of Tab, bow to God's high command, your hearts bound, go onward to the fight, where glory is shining bright. Oh, shake the mountains with your song, and with your banners march along. Onward speed, you gallant knights, trusting God, proclaim your
Ladies and gentlemen, this webinar is now over. You are now all dismissed, and thank you very much once again for attending this event. Good day.